Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Tommy Stiggs here. Well, with the continuation of the album of the Italian American, like I said, by Salvatore La Giomina. La Giomina. Guys, I'm learning as I go. Stick with me. It seems to be an interesting concept, an interesting topic, and as long as people are interested in it, I will continue to do it. This is episode two, and it is chapter two, and it's called The Largest of the Immigrant Groups. As I said before, you'll hear the Godfather music playing in the background, and as I said before, and I will say 1,000 times again, the music has nothing to do with the mafia culture. It has all to do with the Italian culture. Please hit subscribe if you are enjoying the series and if you like the type of content you're seeing on my channel. Okay, let's get into this a little bit here. This is called the largest of the immigrant groups. All right, let's dip into it here. I put in a few notable names in the ticker down below. If you guys want to research them. And again, if anybody wants to find this book, it might be hard to find. Like I said, 1972, my grandmother had this book, the album of the Italian American, Salvatore La Giomina. Okay, the largest of the immigrant groups. The large-scale movement of Italians to America took place in the 1880s, between 1880 and 1914. Wow, that's a big number. Nearly 4 million Italians immigrated to America. They were part of what they call the new immigration, a term used to describe the large numbers of immigrants from southern, eastern, and central Europe. Wow. Hungarians, Poles, Russians, and Greeks were also part of the new immigration. The Italians who arrived between 1880 and 1890 included many skilled craftsmen and professionals, chiefly from the south. Yeah, well, most of the craftsmen and the professionals were from the north, not the south. Yeah, they're chiefly from the north. The, yep, their background was considerably different from that of the millions of southern countrymen who followed them. Yes, southern Italians, for the most part, they were less skilled and were primarily farmers. So in the south, the southern parts of the country, it was farmland. That's where that makes sense. So the northerners were the craftsmen and the professionals, and the southerners were the farmers, farmioles as we call them. Historically, historically, a point has always been made by Italians and others of noting the difference between northern and southern Italians. Right? Exactly. Northern Italians often consider themselves more cultured and superior. That's a rough thing, and that still goes to today. This attitude continued in the United States. This is back then. This book was written in '72, and this is still true to today. Still true to today. The Northern Italians do consider themselves a little bit higher up than the Southern. Just that carried over a century, you know. So, all right. Often Italian colonies in America were settled by people from the same region in Italy. In many of the little Italies that were sprinkled throughout American cities, it was not uncommon to find some blocks that were almost exclusively Sicilian or Napolitan or Calabrian. This is not surprising when one considers that before Italy was unified in 1870, a person's loyalty usually was to the province or region. Yeah, yeah. Barres, Calabria, all different. These distinctions, they lasted in America throughout the first and into the second generation of Italian Americans. Today, however, they are of little importance. I'm going to add, it is of little importance, but it is discussed. It is a topic amongst Italians, Sicilians, about the regions they came from. We do still speak of that generations later. All right. It says today, this is 72 that they said a little importance. This is 50 years later or so, and we're still talking about the regions. Very interesting. All right. The emphasis, here we go, a little bit more here. The emphasis is now placed on the general Italian background. Well, there's some traditions that are all different. So as you guys see, I'm adding some comments of my own in here. The tide of Italian immigration reached the highest level at the turn of this 19th century In one year, 1907, more than 300,000 came to America's shores. Where did they first put down their feet on American soil? The question is. For most Italians, the port of entry was New York. Well, in New York, and the immigration station was Ellis Island. On that little island in New York Bay, the immigrants waited hours or even days to gain official clearance to enter their adopted country. How strange and exciting it all seemed to the newcomers. How odd they must have appeared with their feather beds, cooking pots, knapsacks, their bright clothing, and their unfamiliar trinkets. We are interesting. While colorful, the actual entry was not always pleasant. One American writer who actually went through it told of the immigrants' unpleasant journey to America. They often suffered at the hands of foreign and unsympathetic crews or of overworked, impatient customs inspectors. So the people greeting you were, they could have been kind of rude and nasty. I mean, most unlucky were the immigrants who failed to require medical examination. Yeah, they felt they were forced to remain in Ellis Island or return to Italy. Sometimes a family was broken up as a result, but it was the right thing to do. If they were bringing a disease, you had to do it. You had to do it. A common sight on Ellis Island was large numbers of people tagged with yellow tickets that signified their destination. Fortunately, their welcoming party included representatives of voluntary religious and social organizations, like the Society of the Protection of Italian Immigrants or the Society of Santa Raphael. These organizations performed a real valuable function in providing newcomers with protection, shelter, legal and medical assistance, and informed about job opportunities. This is interesting because most wanted to come here and work, not take a handout, right? Keep that in your mind. That's very important because they were coming here to find a better life, not to take advantage of what the USA has to offer. Like I said, I'm adding some thoughts of my own as I go through this. The welcomed extension of Italian immigrants was a mixed one. The majority have relatives or friends who met them at the ship and eased their way into the new land. Quite a few, however, set off by themselves for Italian section of New York and other cities. For some, it was a bewildering experience to be in a strange land, listening to an unfamiliar language and having little money. Real quick, I'll add this. My ex-father-in-law, the family's last name is Italiano. They came from Sicily. They came to Ellis Island. Somehow they got the name Italiano. Now, I'm not sure if that was just tagged on my father-in-law or that was actually their name in Sicily. I'm going to have to check with my ex-wife about that and see. Maybe she knows the origin, the history. I never really got into it. I do know their name is on the wall, but at Ellis Island, but we never really looked back at it. Okay, they came with little money and little direction. En route to their destination, they would sometimes be stared at and insulted by curious Americans. That's a little bit of discrimination that was asked about in one of my posts. One writer recorded the reaction of one American passenger on a streetcar that contained a large number of newly arrived Italians. I don't see why they let those lousy Dagos ride on the same cars other people have to use. Americans often use hate words like Dago to insult the immigrants, the Italian immigrants, and they used other words for other groups because there was many immigrants. It wasn't just Italians. The migrants were just not Italian. Once settled in the Italian quarter, the immigrant lost no time in looking for jobs. Exactly, they wanted to get right to work. And they found a variety of humble occupations, working as barbers, machine hands, and miners. Success in finding work was absolutely necessary because it enabled them both to take care of themselves and also send money to dependent relatives back in Italy. So they really wanted to work. They really wanted to work. They wanted to come here and make a good life, a better life. Italian Americans who began in the lowest ranks of common building labor saved their small earnings until they could enter into a business for themselves. They struggled, they saved, they lived with little with little, very little. That's me saying that. The building boom that followed World War One gave them the opportunity. Many became independent and successful contractors and builders, undertaking construction jobs in the nation's largest cities. At one point in the 1930s, it was estimated that they were responsible for the construction of over 50% of the buildings in New York City. The Paterno brothers and the firms of Anthony Campagna and Ralph Coluzzi were responsible. Those names are in the bottom, guys. Coluzzi, Paterno brothers, and Anthony Campagna are all listed in the ticker on the bottom of the screen right there. They were responsible for many of the buildings on New York's fashionable Fifth Avenue. Another notable name, Louis R. Perini, a famous contractor from Boston, also became owner and president of the Boston Braves, a major league baseball team which had later moved to another city. Yeah, that's great. While Italian Americans have become important leaders in industry and business, they in no way dominate American business, except in a few specific industries. Theirs is a modest but important role. That's it for that one. So that's interesting. That's episode 2, and this is chapter 2. It's a good thing the chapters they're not very long. I wrapped that up in 10 minutes, so I'm kind of getting comfortable doing it, and I will now record the rest of them. The next episode is lowly jobs for poor immigrants, and I'm going to read that one next. This is upload 2, episode 2 of the Italian American Experience. I hope you're enjoying this series.